As time goes on, it's getting harder and harder to keep marriages together. So, what are the reasons for this? Why are men and women having a harder time getting along? I've thought about this problem for quite a while, and I believe that I understand the reasons. Some of the reasons for the decline of marital stability are economic, some are social, and some are psychological. Historically, marriage has been based on the bedrock economic fact that a well-defined division of labor results in greater survivability. If a man and a woman worked together as a team, with the woman keeping the home front under control, while the man brought home the bacon and chased the wolves away from the door, both gained a competitive advantage over unattached singles and were more likely to survive and prosper. Not to mention the fact that their children were far more likely to survive than those engendered by unattached individuals. This economic basis for marriage survived even the enormous social changes brought about by the Industrial Revolution. But two economic developments in this century began undermining it. One was the large-scale recruitment of married women into the non-domestic workforce during the past 60 years. The other was the development of the welfare state. When employers came to regard their employees simply as interchangeable economic units, they no longer could see any reason why they shouldn't hire married women, even women with children, for any sort of work women could handle as well as men, especially since doing so increased the size of the labor pool and lowered the price of labor. The transition of America from an industrial economy to a service economy during the past 30 years or so has greatly accelerated this tendency by decreasing the percentage of jobs which require a man's strength. At the same time that the percentage of married women employed outside the home was rising from nearly zero 60 years ago to its present level of 70%, technology was greatly reducing the burden of maintaining a home. 60 years ago, clothes were washed by hand with a washing board and a wash tub. Modern fabrics hadn't been invented, and so everything that was washed then had to be ironed. Homes didn't have electric or gas refrigerators, and only those in urban areas where there was an ice house even had ice boxes. Kitchen work took substantially more time and effort, and so did shopping. There was no such thing as popping a frozen dinner into the microwave. In other words, at the same time new employment opportunities for women meant that they weren't as economically dependent on their husbands as in the past, men were finding that a woman's work in the home was less essential than it had been. With all of the modern appliances and shortcuts, a man could get by in reasonable comfort alone. The introduction of the welfare state after the Second World War meant that a woman dissatisfied with married life didn't even have to worry about finding employment if she left her husband. A century ago, couples had fights just like they do today, but they had strong economic motives for making peace and keeping the union together. Today, the tendency is just to announce, "I don't have to put up with this crap," and walk out the door. Paralleling these economic changes were social changes, which also worked to the detriment of marriage. A century ago, when most of us lived in a rural environment or small towns, there was strong social pressure on a couple to stay together. A divorce was almost scandalous. In today's urban environment, this social pressure and the accompanying stigma of divorce are entirely absent. After the Second World War, the rise of feminism and so-called women's liberation also took their toll on marital stability. The feminists asserted that women were essentially the same as men, except, of course, for a few minor anatomical details, and that women didn't need men in order to live a complete and fulfilling life. They insisted on being treated just like men. And of course, their cause was taken up by the government and by the media, which resulted in their doctrines influencing many otherwise normal women. Women consequently lost their special status. When they asserted that they no longer needed the protection or the support of men, many men took them at face value. Men responded by deciding that they no longer had a special obligation or responsibility to support or protect a woman. Deciding to shed a wife became much like deciding to change roommates. Feminism has eroded the traditional relationship of complementarity between men and women, which was a relationship based on their natural differences, and tried to replace it with equality, which is not in accord with reality. The result of this failed effort has been very traumatic for both men and women. In many cases, it has turned natural affection to hostility on both sides. Just as many women have responded by becoming less feminine, many men have tried to accommodate by becoming less masculine. It has played havoc with the institution of marriage. So, what is to be done? Unfortunately, perhaps we can't make things quite as sound as they were a century ago, when most of us lived in much smaller communities, but we can make them a lot better than they are now. We don't need governmental coercion to make marriage healthy again. We just need an end to the governmental programs which have made it unhealthy. Without feminist propaganda and without government interference, the instincts of men and women will do most of what needs to be done to get things back on a healthy track again. Their inherently different natures will reassert themselves again. I believe that the institution of marriage can tolerate a few female executives, just not quite so many as we have today. And of course, I'm not proposing making a law that they can't be corporate executives if they want to. I'm just saying that we shouldn't pump them full of propaganda to convince them that that's what they should be. And we shouldn't have laws which give them an artificial advantage in becoming corporate executives. As more women have left the home and joined the workforce, they have decided to have fewer children. Children are an impediment to their mothers' careers. They are a hardship on mothers who are obliged to hold down a full-time job outside the home. Worse, the women most susceptible to feminist propaganda, the ones most likely to choose a career instead of motherhood, tend to be the brightest, most capable women, the ones who most need to have children and pass on their genes to the next generation. So trying to make the institution of marriage healthy again may make us unpopular, but we have no choice in the matter. We either start having and raising more babies, or we die. Our country dies. We will do what we have to do. I know that a great many thoughtful people share my concerns. I know that a great many decent people are just as distressed as I am about what has happened to our marriage institution. So many of our people today are so busy, so wrapped up in their own affairs, that they haven't taken time to look at what is happening to our society and to think about it, to try to understand its long-range implications, its implications for their children and their grandchildren. I believe that when they do understand these implications, they too will share my concerns. So we need to continue talking with them, to talk with more and more of them. Everything counts on it. And you can help. I hope that you will. Thanks for being with me again today. And please, please tell your friends and neighbors about this program.